Just after midnight, a cloud of poison gas rolled out of a pesticide plant in the Indian city of Bhopal and settled over 250,000 people asleep at its fence line. They woke, choking. Thousands never made it out of their homes. Thousands more collapsed in the streets as they ran. By sunrise, it was the worst industrial disaster in history, and the plant had been built to make something meant to protect food. But the number of dead is not the strangest part of this story. The strangest part is that the same company ran a twin of this plant on the other side of the world, and 8 months later, that one leaked too. A real toxic cloud over a populated American valley. Over 100 people went to hospital. Not one of them died. Same company, same kind of plant. 2 leaks, and 2 outcomes you would never know were the same disaster. This is the story of why. The plant belonged to Union Carbide, an American chemical giant, run in India through a subsidiary it controlled. It made a pesticide called Sevin, and to make it, it used one of the most dangerous chemicals ever handled at industrial scale, methyl isocyanate, or MIC. MIC reacts violently with water, and even in tiny amounts, it sears the eyes and the lungs. It has to be kept cold, sealed, and watched every hour. The Bhopal plant held more than 40 tons of it in a single half-buried tank. When it was first built, the plant sat at the edge of town, but Bhopal grew the way cities do, and crowded settlements filled the ground right up to the wall. By 1984, there were tens of thousands of people sleeping a stone's throw from that tank. On the night of the 2nd of December 1984, water got into the tank. No one is certain exactly how, but it set off a runaway reaction, heat and pressure climbing in the dark with nothing left to stop them. Around midnight, the tank let go, and almost all of its contents poured out as gas. Because it was heavier than air, the cloud stayed low, exactly where people were sleeping. It moved through the settlements and into the city. People woke to a burning fog they could not see through, ran into streets already full of others running, and many simply fell. More than 500,000 people were exposed that night. The official count of the dead in the first days was 2,259. Almost no one believes that was the real number. Later government figures put it near 4,000. Independent estimates run to 15,000–20,000 and beyond. Amnesty International counts more than 22,000 dead over the years that followed. It remains the worst industrial accident ever recorded. And it was not an accident that no one saw coming. To understand why, you have to look at what had been switched off. MIC is only as safe as the systems built around it, and at Bhopal, by that December, almost none of them were working. Not by accident. The refrigeration unit that kept the MIC cold had been shut down 2 years earlier to save money, and its coolant drained off for use elsewhere. The flare tower meant to burn away escaping gas had been out of service for months. The scrubber meant to neutralize a leak was switched to standby and was too small to handle a runaway tank in any case. The alarm that should have warned of the rising temperature inside that tank had not worked for years. The plant was losing money. It was being run down. One by one, every layer of protection on one of the deadliest chemicals in industrial use had been turned off to cut costs, and the people sleeping at the fence line were never told. That is the accusation, and it is not seriously in dispute. So it looks like a simple story. A company cut corners, and thousands of people died for it. Except that 8 months later, the very same company, making the very same chemical,
made some of the same kinds of mistakes, and almost nobody was hurt.
Union Carbide made MIC in only one other place on Earth. A plant at Institute, West Virginia, on a stretch of the Kanawha Valley so packed with chemical works that locals called it Chemical Valley. It was, in every sense, Bhopal's twin. After Bhopal, the company spent millions upgrading safety at Institute, and the whole country was watching the place. And on the 11th of August, 1985, it leaked anyway. A storage tank failed and pushed a cloud of toxic gas out over 4 towns. The same kind of failure was there. The new gas detector had not been set to sense the chemical that escaped. The high-temperature alarm was out of service. 135 people were rushed to hospital. Nobody died. And within weeks, federal safety inspectors walked into the plant and charged the company with 6 willful violations of the law. Now, were the 2 leaks the same? No, and it matters that we say so plainly. Bhopal released around 40 tons of MIC, one of the deadliest gases ever made. Institute released a different, related chemical in a smaller amount, far less lethal. The leaks were not equal, and neither was the neglect. At Bhopal, every safeguard had been switched off, some for years. At Institute, a watched and freshly upgraded plant still slipped. A detector set for the wrong chemical, an alarm out of service. But it was the same company, the same twin plant, safety systems that failed at both, and a real toxic cloud over a place where people lived, and the body counts sit 4 orders of magnitude apart. Which forces a harder question. If negligence were the whole story, there was negligence in both places. So what made Bhopal, Bhopal? The answer is everything around the chemical. Start with the chemical itself. 40 tons of MIC is not 100 people in a waiting room. It is closer to a weapon. And Bhopal was holding far more of something far worse. Then the ground it sat on. Institute's cloud crossed a river valley with warning sirens, evacuation routes, and relatively few people directly in its path. Bhopal's cloud rolled straight into tens of thousands of people sleeping against the wall with no warning at all. And then the part that outlasts the night. Who could be made to answer for it? In West Virginia, inspectors arrived within weeks and wrote the company up. In Bhopal, the cost fell on the people who had the least say in any of it. Amnesty International calls that pattern environmental racism. You do not have to reach for that phrase to see the mechanism beneath it. The same company ran the same risk in 2 places and cut deepest where the rules were thinnest and the neighbors had the least power to push back. The gas did not choose Bhopal. The conditions around it did. Which leaves the last question, what it cost the people responsible. In 1989, Union Carbide settled with the Indian government for $470 million. Spread across 500,000 victims, it worked out to a few $100s each, for the dead, for the blinded, for lungs that never recovered. The chairman of Union Carbide was arrested in Bhopal days after the disaster, released on bail, and flew home. India declared him a fugitive. The United States declined to send him back. He died in 2014, having never once stood trial. The only criminal convictions came in 2010, 26 years after the gas. 7 former Union Carbide India officials, most of them old men by then, were found guilty of negligence and given 2 years each. That is the whole reckoning. More than 20,000 dead, and the man who ran the company was never made to answer for it. And it is still not over. The plant was abandoned, but what it left behind was never cleaned up. Toxic waste still sits on the ground there.
The water beneath the neighborhoods around it has been found poisoned for decades. Children have been born to the survivors carrying injuries traced back to that night. Union Carbide was absorbed by another American chemical company in 2001, and to this day the owners argue the liability is not theirs to carry. 40 years on, Amnesty calls Bhopal a sacrifice zone, a place quietly written off so the cost of a disaster could stay with the people who suffered it and away from the people who caused it.
It is easy, with a disaster this large, to lose the thing it was actually made of. It was a winter night. Families were asleep in one-room homes, with the smallest children nearest the wall. The factory at the end of the lane had been switched off piece by piece to save money none of them would ever see. None of them were warned. By morning, the lane was full of the people who had lived along it. What makes Bhopal the worst of its kind is not that a company was careless. Companies are careless in 100 places. It is that the same carelessness, in a richer valley with sirens and inspectors and lawyers, sent its victims home from the hospital. And here, it killed a city. The company was the same. The carelessness was the same. The difference was everything we build around the chemistry, and who we quietly decide is worth protecting from it. On a winter night in 1984, the people of Bhopal found out they were not on that list. And 4 decades on, the ground they live on still has not been made clean.